Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to speak in support of celebrated Australian journalist Stan Grant. I'm a representative of the Strathfield electorate on land that it belongs to the Wongal clan. It is one of the most culturally diverse electorates in Australia. The people in my electorate have heritages coming from many different shores: from China, India, Nepal, Korea, Vietnam, Lebanon, Italy, Greece, and many more. Over 70% of residents of Strathfield come from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds. I am one of them. We look different, we sound different. I'm sure that many of the residents of my electorate will have experienced at least some of the racism, discrimination and hate that has caused Stan Grant to take some time away from the media. He didn't just walk away though, noting that he would be back. He also acknowledged with great courage that he was part of the media establishment that was the problem. He said powerfully that we did not have the love or the language to speak to the gentle spirits of our land or to lead our community to reconciliation, or I believe, to unite Australians behind a shared purpose and sense of belonging. Even in this dark moment, Stan chose to focus on love as a source of strength, healing and hope. I recently experienced just a little bit of what Stan must have confronted on a daily ongoing basis. I wrote an article for Anzac Day that argued that Anzac was not just a white Australian story, but in fact encompassed contributions and sacrifices from people from all different backgrounds who had not been afforded the opportunity to be part of our nation's celebrated Anzac story. And then, shockingly, but perhaps not surprisingly, there was a lot of abuse on social media. Now, some of the abuse was your usual racial abuse, that I should go back to China, that I had no place here in Australia, that the Anzac tradition only belonged to white Australia and nobody else. But perhaps more insidiously, there was another argument that had a certain logic, and it was a dark, gaslighting, dangerous logic. And that was that because I had raised the issue of race, that made me the racist. And this logic says that any talk of race should be buried, that we should pretend that race doesn't matter, that we should pretend that we all are the same and we enjoy the same privileges and circumstances. That logic said that race doesn't matter. And this is, Mr. Speaker, profoundly wrong. Race is relevant because it is on the basis of race that people are abused, discriminated against, or vilified. It is on the scaffold of race that much structural disadvantage is built. Now, much of this racism occurs online, hidden behind cowardly, anonymous accounts, but much of it still happens in the real world, on public transport, in the streets in broad daylight, and the more subtle, nuanced forces of racism everywhere, peppered through our everyday speech and interactions, in the decisions and judgments we make about who to hire, who to befriend, who to trust, who to let in. Racism is like a dark fog that hangs around you. It clears up sometimes and the sun shines through, and for that moment you feel that you can do anything and be anything, but the fog's still there. So we have to keep talking about race, and we must keep calling out racism and discrimination. We mustn't pretend it doesn't happen. And we must keep talking about race, particularly at this time, when later this year, Australians will vote in a referendum on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait voice to Parliament. And we must continue our fight to get more people from different cultural backgrounds into positions of leadership, to be role models, to change the culture of our institutions, and to assert by the powerful example of them being there that everyone can belong in Australia. So to Stan Grant, I say I stand with you. Australia needs your voice. And to all of those from migrant and minority backgrounds who have experienced racism and discrimination, I also say we stand with you.